Hello, everyone. We are here to think about and prognosticate Week 17 FanDuel tight ends. How excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10, Jason?
Uh, 0.5.
0.5. That's a low grade.
Yeah.
If this were a movie on Rotten Tomatoes, he would not be suggesting to watch it, I don't think. Um, so I guess what's your general vibe of the tight end position this week? Is it weak, strong, like obvious plays, yucky position in general?
There's five guys I'm on out of probably the entire tight end position that I'm remotely thinking about. And I'll probably
Mhm.
maybe even narrow it down to three of them come Sunday.
I think
So
I'm with you.
that's my vibe.
Yeah, I'm with you. So in terms of the high priced guys, obviously Jordan Reed going through injury stuff, Greg Olsen, Travis Kelsey, Tyler Eifert on IR. Out of that group, is Kelsey the clear top option to you, or is Greg Olsen kind of leaning into your roster construction?
I think it's Kelsey. I just think there's a similar floor right now in terms of what could possibly be. Because Kelsey could go out and have, a 7, 8 point FanDuel point game, but I think Olsen's at that point as well. I think Kelsey's upside's a little bit more, just as we've seen lately. Even without Kelsey finding the end zone, I mean, he's going to be a double-digit guy in terms of just, receptions and yardage. Decent matchup against San Diego. Yeah, I think if you have the extra cash, you can go up and use Kelsey because Jimmy Graham hasn't really been used that much. Delaney Walker, Cameron Brate was a guy I was going to be looking at this week, but he's on IR. So above 6K, I think Kelsey's the only logical option for me.
Yeah, you mentioned above 6K, so Jimmy Graham and Delaney Walker, not players you're really looking at too hard.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Delaney Walker, obviously, we're dealing with Matt Castle being there. I don't hate it as a GPP play, either of those two, but I don't know how much exposure I'll be using. I think there's just about 4 or 5 guys I feel just safe in terms of targets with.
Agreed. Moving down 5,900, you got Ertz and Kyle Rudolph. Obviously, Ertz in a good position against the Dallas defense that might actually rest some players depending on, what you're looking at. Is that someone you're looking at in a cash game sense?
Yeah, definitely. Ertz is my guy this week, 5,900. Relatively high total, as you mentioned. I mean, going to be a lot of backups there on both sides of the ball for Dallas. And regardless, I mean, they haven't been good against tight ends this season, allowing the eighth most fantasy points per game. Over the last 5 weeks, ninth most on the season. Ertz, obviously, I think people were probably frustrated last week if they used him because the targets were, have been there a lot lately, and all of a sudden he just got two. But I think that kind of comes back alive, and we kind of see another 8+ target game for Ertz because Carson Wentz has really looked his way of late. So I think 5,900, there's reasonable upside and a reasonable floor as well.
Yeah, agreed. Eric Ebron also in that range. Charles Clay, if he plays, he's been on fire. Antonio Gates, Hunter Henry, that crew against the Chiefs. Do you like that tier at all?
Yeah, I do. I mean, so Sammy Watkins, Charles Clay, both have been putting up reasonable numbers here of late, especially Clay. I mean, 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. EJ Manuel coming under center doesn't exactly thrill me for Clay and Watkins this week. This game overall, I mean, you have some guys in good spots, but and two teams that basically have given up. Um, I don't know how much I can really use of Clay. I think early only GPP, you know what, you can certainly roll him out, but I think that's overall where I'm going to be leaning. I like Eric Ebron quite a bit this week. I think he's a great swerve and a great correlation play. Targets, I mean, of late, 6, 5, 7, and 12, averaging over 6 per game this year. I just think, the way that game, how I see it playing out, Rodgers gets up big, or, at least has to keep Stafford kind of in a high, passing attack. So Ebron for me, I mean, with Riddick out, I think there's, targets to go around quite a bit there.
Yeah, and with that, you talk about Ebron quietly having a career year, quietly having the most receiving yards in his career for a season. So interesting there. You kind of get into a lower tier. after that, kind of a drop off here. CJ Fedorowicz, Dwayne Allen, Deion Sims, Kobe Fleener, Jason Witten. Anything to note in that tier?
No, I mean, I'm not really big on any of those guys. I know Dante Moncrief is looking doubtful for this week. Uh, at Dwayne Allen and Jack Doyle's prices, I'm not really particularly in on them. CJ Fedorowicz, I don't mind. Houston says they're going to still play to win out there. I think he'll be fine. Obviously, I know Fedorowicz is a week removed from his concussion, but saw 7 targets last week. The ceiling really hasn't been there with him. I'd rather take a shot on a Jared Cook, who I do think has a higher ceiling at the same price tag, especially in that matchup against Detroit, because Detroit's been awful against tight ends, throughout the entire season. So if you see Green Bay, I think the stack there is obviously going to be people looking at Adams and Nelson, but Jared Cook's an awesome guy to still kind of pair in there and maybe remove Adams and go Jordy and Cooks instead.
Right. And again, I think people are going to be on Rodgers and Jordy. The combinations of Rodgers, Jordy, Cook is what could differentiate you in a tournament, or Rodgers, Jordy, Adams. So I'm with you. I think that's an interesting way to go. We're obviously seeing them run plays for him, and Rodgers seems to trust him at this stage. So do like to see that. And then, I mean, is there anything lower for you? A Vernon Davis, Richard Rodgers, Lance Kendricks, like any of that cooking for
Not
you? Or?
particularly. Dennis
Yeah.
Pitt is somewhat intriguing at 4,700. I mean, I I still don't think this Baltimore team is going to be able to run the ball, even though Cincinnati's run defense hasn't been that good this year. But Cincinnati's been god awful against tight ends. I mean, allowed the third most FanDuel points to tight ends over the last 5 weeks, fourth most on the season. Pitt is kind of sneaky. Targets aren't always necessarily there. Finally had a big upside week, but this is a guy who really hasn't found the end zone all that much this season, just twice. So for me, I mean, I don't mind him, but I think with enough value, you don't necessarily need to kind of pay down here. I think Cook is probably the higher upside contrarian move, but outside of that, for me, it's just kind of Ertz and Ebron.
Agreed. That's kind of where I'm at. So, generally speaking, what's your moving cash pay up?
Yeah, I like Ertz this week. I like Kelsey. I think those are kind of the guys you can go with and feel pretty safe about. And there's plenty of room to kind of use that cash, especially with D'Angelo Williams and Golden Tate and Eli Rogers and cheap quarterbacks. And there's plenty of moves to make this week to kind of get the higher price tight end in.
Absolutely. As always, if you like what we're doing here, certainly give us a like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you want to read Jason's article, head over to the site and check that out for sure. As always, good luck this week, and we will see you guys in the playoffs.